Good morning and welcome to Retaining Students to Graduation, the second program in our Inclusive Excellence, Resilience, and the President's 3R series. I'm Emily Hammond. I'm from Human Resources, and I'm so glad you're here. I do hope that you had time to and the opportunity to watch Dr. Edwards' video and attend our recruiting session, one of our other 3R sessions that was in October. If you didn't have a chance to attend that session, it is recorded and it is out on the program series website. We will be advertising that when we add the recording from this session as well. So I appreciate you being here. In a few minutes, I will turn it over to Tim and his team, but I will be back at the end to help facilitate the breakout sessions and also to help with some of the Q&A. And I think with that, Tim, go on ahead and get started.
All right. Well, thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. My name's Tim Lytle from the Division of Student Success. We are delighted to be here today. This is actually our fifth one of these, so we are a well-oiled machine by this point. So let's just jump into it here. I'm going to give some context here to our conversation this morning, and then I'm going to introduce you to some folks that are going to talk about their areas briefly, and then we'll have plenty of opportunity for your questions and some conversation and some other activity at the end. But let me start with this session is really focused on retention of the 3Rs, and really by virtue of that, relationships as well, really, because we can't really do retention without acknowledging the relationships that underpin all of that. So to get us some context, let's look at the data. Our fall to fall retention, and these two measures that you see on the screen right now are sort of typical student success measures that we compare ourselves to other institutions by. And you can see that our retention, and when we say retention in this regard, we're talking about the fall enrollment compared to the previous fall's enrollment for first-time, full-time degree-seeking students. And in this data, I'm showing that number for both our Lake Campus and the Dayton campus. So the fall 2020 cohort, in other words, the students that were enrolled in fall of 2020 that meet that criteria, being first-time, full-time degree seeking, 34% of them did not return in the fall of 21, this present term. Now, we've scratched our way back up to the 66% in our previous 2 years with some concerted effort. But to give you some comparison, the average of our IUC schools in Ohio is 78%. And even looking at ourselves compared to our peers that have a similar admittance rate, our admittance rate for the fall 20 cohort, for example, was 96%. University of Toledo, as a comparable, was 95%, but University of Toledo has a retention of about 78%. So we should be closer to that mid to high range of the 70s. As we look at our 6-year graduation rate, again, another measure that's typically looked at to compare institutions, ours is currently at 44%. You can see we've, again, made some progress over the last 4 years from that 36%. But again, the state average with our IUC schools is 57%. And Toledo, since I use them as an example, theirs is at 53%. So again, we should be in that 50 to mid 50 range. And therefore, that's why we're meeting today. So when we talk about then retention, whoops, let me go back. I want to give one of the things that I often talk to faculty about. They'll say, well, retention as a measure is hard for us to get our head around, right? Because it's a late in the game measure, right? So is a graduation rate. And so what can we do now to make an impact? So as we talk about retention in this presentation, what I want you to think about is completion. In other words, don't worry about whether we're going to retain the student for next fall. Think about what can I do to help a student complete the course that they're currently enrolled in and complete the term for what they've registered for in the current term of which they're enrolled. if we think of it in that way as more of that short term, what can we do to help a student complete, then that starts to contribute to retention. So for this presentation, it's the 3 R's and a C, all right? Now, that certainly doesn't work very well. I went to the president and said, hey, can we add a C to your 3 R's? And she said no. So for our purposes, she didn't really say that because I really didn't ask her that, but you get my point. For this purpose, I really want you to think about what is your role as a staff member or a faculty member that helps contribute to a student completing what they started. So in this, what you're going to hear about this morning is from 4 of the departments in the Division of Student Success. And some of you have been around long enough to remember University Division. Remember that? Some of you have been here long enough. In 98, University Division became University College. And then just recently in 2018, we became the Division of Student Success. Partly because University College's focus at that time was on first-year students primarily. And as we grew as a division, when we centralized advising and career services was centralized and joined our division, it really didn't make sense for us to be University College at that time. So only for a few short years, we've been the Division of Student Success. So you can see that over time we've grown into quite a large division. And so what we want to do today is take a few minutes for you to learn about some of the departments within the division. You'll hear brief presentations from our directors in these 4 departments of enrollment services, academic advising, academic support, and career services. You have a chance to ask some questions of them after their brief presentations. And what we want you to do is listen really closely to what those services are and how you can help participate in those departments in working with the students that you work with. And then we'll do some case studies that will talk about some referral processes. Sound like a plan? So to get started, we're going to start with Michael Greist, who is the Director of Enrollment Services. And I'll turn it over to Michael.
All right. This is my moment to boss Tim around today by telling him when to switch slides. I'm really excited about that part. Hi, guys. Welcome. I'm going to talk to you about 3 different offices today on campus, 2 of which fall under enrollment services here in this division, and 1 that falls under student affairs, that work very closely together to facilitate students accomplishing the things that they need to be able to stay enrolled, pay their bill, stay housed. But we're not fixers, we're facilitators. We are folks who help students do the processes they need. So we're going to focus today on that idea of facilitating things that students need, not fixing problems that they have. So Raider Connect is almost 9 years old. It was formed as a joint effort of the bursar, the registrar, and financial aid. And we are the front-facing customer service for all 3 of those offices. So at Raider Connect, you can get help with registration and records. We will help you add and drop courses either online or in person if you need special overrides or if the date to add or drop online has passed. We help explain petitions and special permissions that are needed. We don't make any decisions about any petition processes, and we follow university policy. So we don't have any special powers. We're just here to help students fill out the petitions correctly and let them know about the petition process. Cross-registration like SOCI, and also helping students get transcripts in their academic records. We also do a lot to help students with FAFSA completion, both here on campus as well as we travel to more than 70 high schools across Raider Country each year to help new direct from high school students, as well as we do some adult programming with the Montgomery County Library to help folks outside of Wright State do the FAFSA as well. We help with FAFSA, financial aid verification, financial aid appeals, navigating those processes, as well as explaining what their special circumstances might mean for their federal or state-based financial aid. We also help students navigate the yearly scholarship application and looking for outside scholarships as well through trusted sites. If you've never read a Wright State University tuition statement, it's a special experience because everything is a line item. we are very transparent about our billing, so you can see every single charge individually. But that also can make it very difficult to read, as it is really kind of an accounting balance sheet that has pluses and minuses, pluses and minuses. So we help students understand the itemized bill. We'll help students get into payment plans, understand how to get their refunds and direct deposit, and we'll also help them avoid collections and look at how to avoid late fees. There's that list there that says the rest of what we do as well. And that includes, I'm the university residency officer. So if somebody believes they should be considered a resident of the state for tuition purposes, I help facilitate that process. We also help them add parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, coaches, spouses as proxies and authorized users on their account. We administer the 60 and up program for students who are auditing classes or taking classes for credit as part of that state-based program. And we're really a frontline office in helping students learn how to navigate all the ins and outs of Wings Express and the various screens that we deal with. Go ahead, Tim. So what does Rater Connect have to do with getting students to complete their degree? Well, there are lots of things that fall within the process of our office that have impacts on students' ability to graduate that aren't necessarily the things that we think of right off the top of the bat. We think of them in their academic performance, but really, there are 4 things there on the left that have a lot to do with being able to pay for college, which is a huge barrier in keeping students from graduating. So when a student drops a class, when they think I'll just stop going and I'll take the X, or I'll take an incomplete grade and finish it up next semester, or they think I'll just stay in the class so it doesn't impact my financial aid, but I'll worry about my GPA later. Extending their graduation date by going to part-time or dropping classes or taking a break. Here's what we know. When students take a break, they generally don't come back, not in the time period that they say they're going to. It may be a longer break than they anticipate. And so when a student comes to us and says, I want to drop a class, we tend to have an answer across campus of, oh, let me show you how to drop that class. You go into Wings Express and you do this. We need to stop and give a bigger answer. What else does dropping that class do? Is it going to impact your standards of academic progress? Every student has to complete 67% of the classes they start and maintain either a 2.0 or a 3.0 GPA. And there's a limit to the number of classes you can try before you're ineligible for financial aid as well. Grant-based aid and scholarships are often based on the number of hours the student is enrolled in, and depending on when they drop that class, they may have a financial implication involved in reducing their course load. And then if they drop out completely for any given semester, they're going to have to return a portion of the financial aid that they received based on the date that they withdrew. So again, they may not be getting a refund for the classes, but they may still have to return financial aid that they received, which can cause them to have a debt to the university and will keep them from being enrolled in future terms. So it's not as simple as, yeah, you should drop that English class. We have to stop and ask, what are the implications in the long run? And what are other options for you besides dropping that class or taking the incomplete or the X grade? There's another office that we work with here in the enrollment services area, and that's the student retention team. They are 2 years old, and our success coaches as part of the student retention team will reach out to students in a number of different ways to provide support and connect them to resources. Again, not fixers, but they're stopping to ask the question about, why aren't you going to class? What's not going well? Why haven't you turned in this assignment? What's going on? How can we plug you in to resources that are there? So they're there to help them understand those academic and financial policies of the university, help them identify those external challenges and what resources we can connect them to, as well as helping them find resources like academic support or mental health services, other things on campus. It's helping students who are struggling academically find the services that they need. Go ahead, Tim, to the next screen. So we have something called the Rater Academic Progress System. No one calls it that. We call it RAPS. And so RAPS is an early intervention program. We have to know a student is struggling before their grades come in. So waiting till after that first semester and seeing that they have a poor GPA is too late. We need to hear from folks that the student is missing courses or not performing well now, so that we can help intervene and get them back on the path right away. So RAPS is this coordinated care effort. Anybody can put up an alert in RAPS of early signs of academic issues, but we also reach out to faculty who have students in their classes that are part of our identified cohort first-year students, athletes, other students who are at high risk. And we say, hey, 4 times a semester, we reach out and say, tell us how these students are doing so that we can reach out to people who are part of that higher risk group. So you can raise an alert at any time, but 4 times a semester, we actually reach out as the student success team and say, how is this group of students doing, so that we have some understanding. Then what happens once that RAP alert is raised, first they'll hear from a success coach that is assigned their section of the alphabet. They'll say, we would love to talk to you about what's going on. Let's get together and talk about it. They may exchange emails. If there's no response to that, then we'll have one of our peer success coaches reach out via phone. They'll get one more communication, and then we'll tell the person who raised the alert, you know, we reached out, but they didn't respond to us. Right now, for the fall semester, we're reaching a 40% response rate for students who are reaching back out to us and saying, yeah, I could use some help, and we're communicating with them then via phone or email or via a web or in-person appointment. In some way, shape, or form, they're contacting us back to say, thanks for the help, this is what's going on. Go ahead to the next screen, Tim. The peer success program is one of the things that we're super proud of that's really working well. And the peer success program matches students in this cohort, this higher risk cohort, with a peer coach. And the idea here is that we want them to see what a successful student looks like, what their day looks like, what they're doing to study, how they're getting involved. And we often can get information back and forth to these students who are involved in our peer success program, things that they won't tell us as staff or you guys or as faculty, they will reach out and have a conversation with to another student. So right now we have 7 peer coaches, and there are 60 students that are currently enrolled in our peer success program. I just got some data this morning about the program. There were 186 separate meetings with students in the success program over the fall semester. They are, as a group, largely more academically successful and less likely to have a RAPS alert than other students. So the program is working. These are students that want that little extra connection, and it's working out really, really well. So this continues to grow, and we're always looking for new peer coaches. So if you have an amazing student that you work with, we'd love to hear about them so that we can get them involved in the program. And then finally, we want to talk to you a little bit today about student advocacy and wellness. This is a group that works within the student affairs area, but we work with them on almost a daily basis because they're part of that combined concern and care effort through RAPS. We pass cases back and forth, and I say cases, students who need assistance, we pass them back and forth to see who is best ready to serve them. So student advocacy and wellness can help students who are experiencing power-based violence, general health and wellness support. They may be having financial issues or issues with housing or food insecurity. This is the group that runs the food pantry on campus, as well as the Raider Closet for students who need clothing as well. But one of their primary concerns is just to help students who need to advocate for themselves. They're having a concern with a faculty member. They are having an issue with a landlord. They're having issues navigating policies at Wright State. And they just need someone to help them start a conversation and to advocate for themselves. And this really, again, this is not a fix-it office. You wouldn't go to student advocacy and wellness and say, I think I'm going to be homeless, find me someplace to live. They would work with that student to identify community resources, talk about options, help them select the best option for them, with the hope that they would then be able to navigate these things on their own in the future and end up in a more secure place than they were when they encountered the student. So student advocacy and wellness would work with a broad range of things, whereas Raider Connect has a certain area. And then we also, in the success coaches, work with primarily academic concerns and then make referrals based on that. So these 3 offices work closely together for case management and kind of general student advocacy, trying to get some of the problems outside of their academic life to be calmed and get them ready to focus on their academic concerns. So I'm here now to answer questions. This is the only part that makes me nervous. I can talk to you all day, but questions I'm ready for now. What questions do you have? I see Becca's hand.
Feel free to either unmute yourself or you can put them in the chat, either way.
How many resources does student wellness and advocacy have? Like, I know that they have a backup in terms of the number of students they're able to serve for counseling, and what is the university doing proactively to address that?
So
Or
student
do you know?
advocacy and yeah, student advocacy and wellness is part of that broader spectrum. They all report to Bob, but Destiny and her team in student advocacy and wellness, they've focused specifically on case management and students who are in crisis. So the counseling area would be a separate piece than this. They do have a backup right now of students who would like to see a therapist or counselor on campus. But those students are contacted by phone every week. They're assessed, and if they do present a bigger crisis, then they are moved up the list or referred to emergency crisis services. So there is a backup, but it's a very well managed list of people on that waiting list. That's one of the things that I have learned recently. What else is out there, Tim?
We had a shy group today. I don't see any questions in the chat.
Shaylin says, where can the student get information about the Peer Success Program? Is there a website? The Peer Success Program is something that we communicate with students in the cohort about at the beginning of the term. They're contacted if they're eligible. They identify that they're interested, and then we match them with the peer mentor. So we will reach out to the students that qualify for that program. However, the peer success staff is there all the time. So if we identify a student through a RAPS report or through working together with other offices that could use some help learning to use Pilot, or could use some help identifying academic resources and they'd like to talk to a student, they're also available on kind of an on-call basis. So if you contact any one of the folks over in the retention team and student success, we can match them up for a temporary relationship with a peer success coach at any time. So you would find that on the retention team website.
There's another question as well.
Okay, let me go to Kristen's.
Kristen
Is
asked
the
about
peer success program? No, it's not just for first year students. That cohort includes new transfer, as well as a few other high risk populations. So a new transfer student would be contacted about participating in the program. And then let's see. Sure, Adam. I think that there is a communication to students in regards to the standards of academic progress. So students who are nearing or are in danger of not meeting the standards of academic progress do receive a notification from Raider Connect in cooperation with financial aid that says, we want you to be aware that after your fall term or after your summer term, you're in danger of not meeting the standards of academic progress at the end of spring. We do a lot of coaching and orientation and also in academic advising. Amanda can tell you more about that, about the impact of adding and dropping classes. And in general, we still have some students that are caught off guard, are surprised that dropping out completely or taking I grades will have an impact on that. So we do a lot of upfront coaching, and they do get kind of a flagged email and communication. That's also something that happens with success coaches and academic advising. So there's not necessarily a smack upside the head that says, hey, buddy, you're in danger of some academic standards, but we do communicate with students, and it is a conversation that we're having intentionally with students who are adding and dropping or having concerns with courses across the division and in all of those offices. I hope that answers your question. Did I cover it all, Tim?
It looks like you did. Great.
Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Amanda, who's going to talk to you about academic advising.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for spending some time with us to learn about what we do every day. So as Mike shared, I'm going to be talking to you about university academic advising, and we thought the best way to start with that is to tell you who we are and who we serve. So university academic advising consists of professional academic advisors on the Dayton campus. We work very, very closely with Lake Campus advisors, sometimes talking daily. Certainly, every week we have monthly meetings that include Lake Campus advising, but we are two separate units. Tim shared earlier about the timeline for our division, and one of the pieces in there highlighted when advising centralized. So that was in late 2017, the beginning of the spring 2018 semester. So we are centrally coordinated and decentrally delivered. So we are housed in all of the academic colleges, including a space in the Student Success Suite for our students who are undecided on their major, and our College Credit Plus students. So once we centralized, we knew that the best way to reach students is to go where they are, and that's in the colleges, versus necessarily saying, okay, well, before, you would go to your college for advising, or you would go to your academic department for advising, and now you need to start going to this new place all of a sudden. We wanted to have as minimal change for the student as possible. So we started that once we centralized, and it has worked really well for us. In terms of students that we serve, all undergraduate students in the academic colleges on the Dayton campus, including also our College Credit Plus students. Our MBA students, MBA is the only graduate program that we advise. All of the other graduate programs are advised within the colleges or even the academic departments, in some instances, either by faculty members or maybe like a program director, something like that. But the MBA is one that is advised by the professional staff advisors and prospective students. I would think that some people would probably be pretty surprised at the amount of appointments that are allocated each week to prospective students. The majority of them are transfer students. Any more transfer students, I guess you could say, shop around. They will go to, so for example, a Sinclair student, it would be very common for them to, as they're approaching graduation, to have an appointment with a UC academic advisor, Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, a Wright State advisor, a Miami advisor, and then maybe, University of Dayton, and then Ohio State. So they really go around and see who's going to accept the majority of my transfer classes and what will be my shortest route to graduation. So a lot of the prospective students we see don't even end up enrolling. They just still, work with an advisor to find out what their plan could look like and then make their decision at that point. Okay, Tim, we can go ahead and go next. So when Tim talked about the C, the 3 R's and a C, the C is advising. We are completion. I would say that retention sometimes is a pretty broad term, a big umbrella, but within advising, we focus on completion, course completion, course by course, semester by semester, eventually leads to completion. And whatever that student's goal is, whether they are completing a degree here, whether they're paying for a certificate, things like that, whatever the student's goal that brought them to Wright State is, we continue to work on completion to help them reach that goal. And preferably for our degree seeking students, we really work hard to try to keep them on a path of 30 semester hours a year, which leads then to completion at the 4-year rate. Not everyone necessarily completes 15 hours in the fall and spring. So for those students, we encourage summer classes to try to get caught up to still reach that 30 semester hours of completion a year. So some key factors that are involved in that track toward degree completion. Completing our needed, or a student's needed developmental courses within the first year. So if a student places into developmental English, we work really hard to try to get them into that developmental English course in their first semester, and then developmental math course within their first 2 semesters. The reason that we emphasize the English in the first semester is because the odds are great that if a student does not have that developmental English course in their first semester, they're still going to be in other courses that will require writing of some kind. And if they are feeling as if they are not optimally prepared to do well in those courses, then that can lead to an unsuccessful first semester. And, 10 years ago, if a student didn't do really well in the fall, then they would, come back in the spring and we'll repeat those classes and we'll try to get back on track. Anymore, if a student doesn't do well in the fall, they don't come back in the spring because they have a really hard time justifying paying the bill or paying back the loans for something that they do not feel that they've been successful in. So we work really hard to make sure that first semester schedule is, the best possible schedule we can get them in. So we really try to get those developmental courses in as soon as possible. And the next key factor that we want to focus on is course availability. So there's a lot of factors involved in that maybe some people might not consider if they're not in the world of advising. Semester, is a course offered in the semester that we need it to be offered? So for example, if a class is only offered every spring, once a year, every spring, can we guarantee that the prerequisite for that course will be offered every fall? Because if that's not offered in the fall, then they can't take the course in the spring. So that throws off their plan, throws off their map. Our courses, 2 courses that are required for a certain major, maybe a biology and a chemistry course that are only offered one semester, are they offered at conflicting days and times? And they overlap and a student can only be at one. That's something that's very common that we deal with every registration season, finding classes that are needed that are conflicting. Number of sections, if a class is only offered to graduating seniors and a certain major has 40 graduating seniors, but the course capacity is at 32. So what do those other students do? Do they wait for it to be offered again? Are we able to add another section? Like, what can we do to make sure that we are reaching our full capacity for all of our students that need these classes? And then also consistently offering courses when we're able to predict that they're offered. So we create academic plans for all of our students. And if we are planning that a class is going to be offered every fall, and then all of a sudden the department decides, okay, well, we're going to start offering it every other fall. Okay, that's totally fine. We can do that. But we need to know that so then we can adjust these plans, and having as much lead time as possible would help so that we can make alternative plans for our students when they were expecting it to be offered this next fall to say, okay, well, it's not going to be offered till the following fall. So can we get a course substitution? Can we transfer the credit in at another school? What kind of creative things can we work out to where we're still keeping the student on timely progress toward degree? Okay. Tim? So I just mentioned, I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself, but I was talking about planning, so this leads into it. Within university academic advising, we have been charged to create education plans for all of our students. So we wanted to talk a little bit about academic planning. So highlighting this, we're going to start with our U Achieve, the degree audit that we use on campus. Some of you may remember DARS reports that used Darwin. That was the tool that we used until about maybe six-ish years ago, maybe 7. It range. The years are kind of running together, but now we use UAchieve. Sorry, that I got sidetracked. Now we use UAchieve. And this is a great tool for students. It lists all of the courses that are required. General education, core requirements, major requirements, just as kind of a big list. It does focus more about what a student has completed versus necessarily what the plan will be moving forward, but it's something that we encourage students to check in each semester on their degree audit, see what they have next coming up. One thing is that it's not used to full capacity across campus in terms of all of the colleges and all of the departments using their degree audits. Some use it very, very frequently every day. And then others, it's more of we have it, but it hasn't really been updated. So we don't really tell students to use it because it's not accurate, et cetera. Within university advising, we are trying to use it more to reach more of a fuller capacity. For example, relying on the degree audits to use it for our electronic degree certifications. So each semester when students are graduating, we look at all of their course requirements, make sure that they have met everything that's needed for the degree. So when the degree audits are accurate and we can, depend on them to listing everything that's appropriate for graduation, then we can run reports and it will show us what students have not met that requirement instead of having to go through and look at it student by student by student. So we're trying to move in using these tools to be more efficient and effective. Along with that, with our education plans, our individual education plans, we are currently using paper document or Word documents, paper, PDFs, editable PDFs. So for quite some time, we have had an electronic education planning tool on our wish list, something that we would continue to ask for and to advocate for the importance and how it can help our students. And so we are thrilled to let you guys know. I can't say how happy I am to talk about this, but Wright State has been selected by the Gates Foundation to pilot an education planning tool with Stellic. And we are in the very, very beginning stages. Yes, Becca, how she's got the confetti going, I couldn't agree more. We are at the beginning stages. So starting in the spring semester, we're going to do a lot of like the behind the scenes work to get all of these set up, but just the capacity, the potential that we're going to be able to provide service for a student is just going to be excellent. Advising will be alerted when a student has not passed a prerequisite course and they need their map updated. Now we just kind of find out when a student comes in for the next appointment. There's no way to check efficiently 350 students, but this advising will be alerted when a student has fallen off their track. We will be able to provide some seat management data back to the colleges and the departments in terms of this many students have this particular course on their education plan for this semester, so they can start to see capacity or demand. They can start to see if the demand will reach what they have planned and if they need to adjust accordingly. So we are really, really thrilled, and it will work hand in hand with our degree audits as well. So hopefully we'll continue to have some updates to share with the university moving forward, but that will start in the spring. Next, please. And then the last thing we wanted to talk about in terms of completion and retention within advising is kind of tying back to our transfer students. So I spoke a little bit about our prospective students at the beginning. So transfer students, we are seeing within advising more and more students coming in with transfer credit. And it's not always a student who started at a community college. CCP is incredibly common. Students coming in sometimes with multiple institutions. A student could come in new direct from high school, coming through orientation and have CCP credit from Edison, from Clark State, from Sinclair. And then adding that into our traditional transfer students who maybe went to school in Arizona or North Dakota or wherever. A lot of that is very common with the base partners, family members of people have been transferred with the base and coming to Wright State with their multiple institutions. So we really work hard to work with the transfer center, with the DEO's team, to be as transfer friendly as possible to all of our transfer students. So we wanted to highlight the tool that we use to evaluate transfer credit, and it's called TESS. transfer evaluation system. So back in the day, we had a paper process where an advisor would fill out this cover sheet, attach a copy of the syllabus, and send it through campus mail. So I think you can imagine how many got lost, how many would, it was very common to tell a student, okay, well, when you see me next semester, I should have some evaluations back to share with you. It was incredibly time-consuming process. So now with this being an electronic system that we're able to use, an advisor can upload a PDF of the course syllabus. We scan it in the copier, upload it, send it to the colleges to be reviewed. And then we get answers back much faster. The course evaluators get a little ping reminder, maybe when it's been a week or 2 weeks and they haven't responded. So this helps tremendously with those prospective students who are shopping around and trying to get answers before they commit to enrolling. So this is another piece, I would say, with the transfer evaluation that's so key. Next, please. So focusing in on how you can help, how, like a Jerry Maguire, help me, help you. So how you can help us help our students. So directing students to academic advising as much as possible. So often students feel like they can self-advise, or if their friends the same college, well, then this is what they were told by their advisor, so that should be good enough. But our Wright.edu/advising is an incredible tool for our students. It has all of our contact information, lists how to find out who their advisor is if they're not sure. While we were remote, the advising team created a lot of videos, self-help videos for our students that we would email out to them. And so we have uploaded those onto the website. So it's a really, really great resource. Again, we talked about the degree audits, encouraging students to run their degree audit regularly, which they can do on Wings Express, review it for any possible curriculum changes, anything that they need to make sure that they're aware of, and then meeting with their advisor regularly. They don't always have to come in for an appointment, even if they just send an email and touch base saying, this is what I'm planning to register for the next semester. Does that look great? So it can be a really efficient touch base for the student. It doesn't have to be a full hour-long appointment, but just making sure that they are checking in. And again, but these education plans will be able to do all of that. They can just log in, look at their plan, make sure the advisor hasn't made any changes, and then they're good to go. And then our last is just a little ask to anyone in the colleges and departments just to keep us in mind when they're coming up with any upcoming curriculum changes, so we can make sure that our planning with the students continue to be as accurate as possible. Thank you.
And also make those changes to the degree audit system.
And help make sure the changes are made in the degree audit. Yes. Yes. So now it's my turn for questions. If you guys have any questions, we also will have opportunity at the end for questions as well. So whatever we can do to answer anything you want to know.
So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, or you can ask it in the chat. Sort of builds on Adam's question, Amanda, when he asked about students gaining awareness of their academic standing. That's on the degree audit, right? I mean, it'll always be printed on their current standing, correct?
Yes, and then Wings Express, like all of that is listed in Wings Express as well. We can't encourage students enough to get familiar with Wings Express, play around, look at all the different links. So many times, I just had a student yesterday email me, can you give me the name of all of my instructors so I can ask them for letters of recommendation? It's in Wings Express. You just have to go look at it. So a lot of that stuff is all listed right there. They just have to take the time to kind of play around with it and familiarize themselves with the tool.
Great, thank you.
Amanda, when it comes to the difference between academic college advising and academic faculty advising, what is the best way for us to notify students that they shouldn't start with you so that they get frustrated that you couldn't help them and had to direct them to a faculty advisor instead? Should that be something that, we put a note in advisor notes somewhere that the student needs to meet with the faculty advisor and we told them so, but they ignored us or something like that. What's the best way to help you and help them?
No, that's excellent. And just to give everyone else a little context, the College of Liberal Arts has faculty advisors. The academic advisors in liberal arts do not necessarily advise, or do not even necessarily, they do not advise on the major requirements. So we direct students to the academic departments for that. And Becca, we just had a meeting this morning actually with Dean Karen and the advising team, and we had talked about creating kind of like an advising syllabus that we can share with students to say, this is what your academic advisor can help you with, and this is what your faculty advisor can help you with. But I would say that anytime we talk about major requirements, which major elective should I take, things like that, all of that would be answered by the faculty advisors. Pam Beatty, can you review how the supply and demand of STELIC will work? How soon would departments know if they needed to add additional section seats, et cetera? Tim, you might know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Pam. I mean, in theory, as long as our as long as the student has mapped out the full of their educational plan in the system, then we can predict out as far as the student has their plan. So the idea is that that system would continue to be mined by our registrar in order to work with the departments for seats management. So in theory, you could project out 4 years, right? Because what we envision is the student would actually do an electronic plan at orientation, and it would be kept on file electronically that would ping the advisor that would review it, approve it. So you have this sort of opportunity to have a required advising intervention, right? It might be as simple as reviewing the plan, saying, yep, you're on track. And then that would give us a great sense of the capacity we need for future terms. So hope that answers your questions, Pam. All right, we'll move on, I think.
Sorry, I muted myself already. Next, I would like to introduce you to David Bringhurst, who's the director of the Academic Success Centers on campus.
Thank you. I'm really glad that, Amanda, that you quoted the "Help me, help you" quote from Jerry Maguire, because that's my favorite quote. I feel like not only does that make a really good subtitle for all of our presentations today, but it's really the nature of all of our work together. And I don't just mean our areas, but all of the people who are attending here, right? We're always working in collaboration with one another, or should be, and trying to collaborate with the students to help them to be successful. And many's the day where I think to myself, help me, help you. So I appreciate that. I think it's a good introduction to what we're talking about today. So I got sort of a two-pronged approach here for the discussion about academic support, and it's kind of highlighted in this first slide. First of all, I want to talk about what it is, which for most of you is going to be a pretty obvious thing, but there's some details that maybe you're unaware of. And then we can talk about how you can help us to help students. So we can go on to the next slide. I'm not going to go through each bullet point here, but as you're absorbing the content of this slide, I do want to point out some important takeaways that I think are here. First of all, you'll notice that we have specialized support for math and math-related courses in our Math Learning Center. And similarly, we have specialized support for writing in the University Writing Center. And it's no coincidence that those two areas, math and writing, are the two areas that we also provide at this university developmental support for those courses, because they're so fundamental to the educational process. As was alluded to before, students are going to encounter writing in many of their courses. And really, I think the same is true for math. I think, it's probably an underappreciated concern for lack of a better term. We talk about literacy frequently or fairly frequently in our society, but we don't really talk about numeracy too much. And you get into situations where people are sharing data with you. I think a lot of times people misunderstand data because they don't understand numbers well. So these two things are fundamentally important, and we have specific centers for the support of those things. You'll notice as you're taking a look at the slide, there's an absence here of 3,000 and 4,000 level courses. And this gives me an opportunity to kind of address one of the myths, I think, about tutoring. And it's a myth that if you've thought this before, that we tutor for every course that's out there, you're certainly it's not because you're crazy. There are a number of reasons why that myth is out there. One, because I think all of us share the desire for it to be true, but it's not. It's something that in past versions of what we do has been advertised, because again, it was something that people wanted to do. But there's a variety of reasons why we don't do that. Some of them are resource based in terms of funding from the university or what have you. Others are a little bit more what I would call practical concerns, right? So we hire students to do the tutoring in our areas, and as you get up in coursework, it becomes harder and harder to find students who feel, first of all, themselves qualified to tutor at those courses. There's fewer and fewer students who are taking those courses, certainly by the time you get to 4,000 level courses. And so it can actually be quite difficult to recruit tutors who are qualified to do the tutoring at those areas. So there's a variety of factors that play into that. What we've done instead is we've focused at the 1,000 and 2,000 level courses. Really, core courses is the key, right? So there's a small number of 3,000 level courses that kind of sneak in there. There's a philosophy 3,000, for example, that's sort of the baseline core course in the philosophy area. So we do tutor in those areas. There's one exception to this, and that is in the University Writing Center. So all of our other services are focused on undergraduate. And the Writing Center is focused on undergraduate as well, but it's the one center where graduate students can come in and get assistance. And the reason for that is that the nature of the Writing Center is that we're trying to hire students who have proven themselves to be good academic writers. And really, in order to provide even a decent minimal amount of support for somebody, if you're just an intelligent reader, you can oftentimes provide really important feedback to somebody in their writing. So I don't need to find people who are, graduate level chemistry majors to review a chemistry paper necessarily, right? To sit down and talk to somebody about, does this make sense? Does it seem organized, et cetera, et cetera. So we're able to kind of expand our services in that area.
Hey,
So
Dave.
like I said, targeted support for high demand core and lower level courses, and also targeted support for high DFW courses. Specifically, supplemental instruction is the sort of program that we have that is based around high DFW courses. But really, in trying to calculate where we're going to provide our services, we look at that statistic for really everything that we do. It's sort of a requirement for supplemental instruction, which is we follow the University of Missouri Kansas City sort of rules on that. And the last thing I would say about this that I think is really important as a takeaway for you is that two things really. The tutors that we hire are highly qualified and they're highly trained as well. We are part of the CRLA certification program. So that's the College Reading and Learning Association. And so all of our tutors are required to go through training to get themselves certified in that area. Maybe the most important thing you can take away from this slide, though, is the simplest thing. If you just remember that our services are free, that's an important point, especially where students are concerned, because that's going to be something that they're concerned about, right? Is whether or not our services are free. We can go on to the next slide.
David, we had a couple questions come in the chat. I don't want to lose
Oh,
them.
did we?
So let's answer them while we go. There, Donna Braswell asked, why so many DEV courses? You want to take a stab at that? I can answer that if you want.
Well, let's both take a stab at it, because my answer would be I don't think there are so many DEV courses. We have DEV for writing and we have DEV for math. And you actually can talk about this even better than I can, but we've here in recent years made a significant change to how the university approaches DEV classes. And so, yeah, I'll turn that over to you, because I think
Yeah,
you
so
speak to that pretty
it
eloquently.
looks like, when you list them that way, Donna, it does look like we have more DEV courses than before, but with our co-requisite strategy, what you'll notice is we do a just-in-time remediation. So for every equivalent math course, gateway course, there's an equivalent DEV version. So a student would take DEV 0280 at the same time that they would take math 1280. So what that is the corresponding remedial course for the appropriate developmental math that that student needs to be successful in that gateway math course. And we do the same in English as well. So there's a DEV 0100 or 0100 that corresponds with the English 1100. And then Becca asked the question about the Writing Center, David, back there.
Yeah.
Are there any repercussions in terms of a student who argues that they put their paper through the Writing Center and they should have gotten a higher grade?
Well, can I get some clarification? Like, what's that in the, like, what repercussions for that? What do you mean there?
That was in terms of having someone read their paper that was not a chemistry major or something like that, when you were saying that they didn't have to be part of the program that the student was doing.
Yeah, it's certainly true that not everybody agrees with me on that philosophy or agrees with our philosophy on that. So students, in fact, one of the, I think, themes that we find in life, right, is most of our unhappiness comes from mismatched expectations, right? So the student, first of all, the student is responsible for the grade they get on a paper, right? They're the ones that have to make the changes, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and by the way, I would also say, like, is it sometimes the case that it's legitimately true that somebody walks in and doesn't get exactly what they wanted out of a situation where it would be reasonable that they had gotten that thing? Yeah, that does happen on occasion. So, yeah, and we'll see some data here. In fact, I think on the next slide to sort of address that, because as well as we do, some students do sometimes leave our centers and they're not happy with something. So
this is a very popular slide, David. There was a question about charges. So Christy asked, have we done away with all charges for tutoring?
yeah, I'm really glad for these questions, because this is an area I think of a lot of confusion. So it's true that at one time there were charges for, so like as far as I know, the Writing Center has always been a free service and the Math Learning Center has always been a free service, but tutoring services, even when I inherited it, we had we charged for that service at one point, and I forget exactly how that was structured. But one of the things that I was adamant about when I took over supervision of that area is that we get rid of that, right? Like, I just didn't want there to be financial barriers for the students. Now, we also have some fees that we charge to students in tutoring services. So tutoring services is very one-to-one appointments every week kind of based, right? And so what we have a problem with some students is they'll make appointments and then they won't show up for them, or they'll cancel very, very late. And then we've got tutors who could maybe have done something else or help somebody else who are no longer available to do that. So we try to encourage students to communicate with us ahead of time on that. And so we charge a no-show and or late fee for that. We're currently reviewing that policy as well, because I'm not entirely convinced that it does what we hope that it does. And I think that sometimes the impact of that fee hits the student long after it has any sort of motivational ability left in it. And so we're taking a look at that one as well. So for those of you who said that there are some charges that you've seen occasionally or whatever, yeah, that's usually because of some sort of late fee that or no-show fee that's come up. We certainly believe that our services are valuable to students. I think it's intuitively true. I can't imagine that there's a university in the world, let alone the country, that would say, oh yeah, we don't want to provide tutoring for students. Just as some examples, I don't want to throw too much data at you, but our recent data shows that 86% of students who attended SI sessions are in a C or better, compared to 73% of students who did not attend. I'm not conducting a science experiment here, so like this is correlative data rather than causative data. This might be a result of some self-selection in there or whatever, but on the whole, we think it boils down to this. The key to us having successful interactions with students is having interactions with students, like students engaging in the process, students spending time on task. That's the whole ball game. And so that's something that we're trying to facilitate in terms of our contributions to the completion mission here. In addition to numerical data, I think we sometimes undervalue the experiential things, especially when we're talking about students. And so I've a somewhat selective set of statements there, but so that you don't think that they're completely cherry picked, because of course they are cherry picked, right? Like I'm sure if we have a bad comment in there somewhere. So if we go to the next slide, just to give you an idea, and here I want it to be as transparent as possible. So I chose our worst number. This is a number from this past year when we were doing everything remotely. It was the COVID year. Nobody was in a good mood. And still, 97.3% of our students agreed or strongly agreed that they were satisfied with the help they received from our centers. And 97% of them reported greater understanding of material or improved work as a result of their sessions. So, to Becca's question earlier and to comments that I've received before, like, what does this mean? Like, this is a really good number. It's really high. I'm proud that we're measuring our improvements in like decimal points of a percentage as opposed to full points or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that whether you're looking at last year's data or the previous year's data where we're in the 98 or 99%, you're still talking about 1 to 3 out of every 100 students who interact with us walking away not being happy about it for some reason. And sometimes that's a matter of they didn't hit it off with their tutor. Sometimes it's a matter of the mismatched expectations. Sometimes maybe it's a matter of we didn't do something that we should have done in that rare case. But the vast majority of students who use our services walk away, have wonderful things to say about us, and have a good experience with it. So we're very proud of that. Let's go ahead and transition. So you got an idea of like who we are, what we do. Let's talk a little bit about how you can kind of help us accomplish those goals a little bit. So the tools here that we're talking about on this slide are really, I think, most useful if you happen to be teaching a class, right? And so most often that's probably faculty, but I know that there are staff who step in and teach certain courses as well. So out on our website, and there's links embedded here. So I think these slides are going to be shared at some point. But each website has syllabus, what we call snippets. I don't know why we call them snippets. That was the word that came to my mind, and it's kind of a cute word, so we keep using it. But basically, you can go out to those sites. There's a drop down, there's a menu off to the right side of each of those sites, and it'll say faculty resources. And then you can click there, and there'll be text on the web page that you can copy and paste into your syllabus if you want to. There's also for the Writing Center, it's the Writing Center, so they made a Word document instead of putting the language directly into the web page. But basically, it's a copy and paste, and you can add information about our centers to your syllabus. The other thing I would encourage you to do, if you are of a mind to, is invite us to your classroom for a tutor talk. we'll certainly be willing to send any of our tutors, writing coaches, math tutors, what have you, to talk to your class. I think there's a lot of value in your students meeting our students and getting a sense of how friendly and approachable they are and how knowledgeable they are as well. But the program directors have been known to show up in a classroom to give a presentation as well. So it's a great way to promote our services. And I would say one of the key ways to promote our services is a referral from the teacher or faculty member in a classroom. That carries a lot of weight. Students are sometimes intimidated by you, but they do listen to you sometimes. And so you promoting our services to them and sort of giving it the seal of approval is helpful towards driving students to our front door. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's where I think the rubber really meets the road. And again, I'll give you a chance to absorb what's on the slide there. But I think often people try to say too much when making a referral. I oversee those areas, and sometimes I do that as well. I think it's very natural to want to share as much as possible with students because you want to encourage them to come see us and help them navigate the process as well. But our advice is try to keep it simple. That helps both you and the student. Our front desk staff is highly trained and they're well versed in all of our policies and procedures. Let them take care of that heavy lifting. If you do want to personalize things and you have the time, I would say if it's appropriate to the situation, maybe you could walk the students to our centers in Student Success 122. If you're transferring a phone call, maybe stay on the line and help the student to articulate their need to us, to kind of keep the student from having to tell their story, multiple times or whatever. But these are good ways of referral, and we'll talk here in a minute about sort of the barriers that students perceive to getting the help, and that's really what we want to target our messaging on. So when we're making a referral, we'll focus on those things. But I also want to point out before we leave this slide that a referral for employment to us is also very, very important. We're very proud of our training program. We're very proud of the environment that we have. We think students get a great experience working for us. We make a concerted effort to help students who work for us to tie their experiences with us to their future career status. We coach them on how to talk about their experiences in our centers in interviews and that sort of thing. And so getting high quality students in our door to help other students is really, really important. So we'd appreciate any referrals you have. If you happen to know some of these wonderful students, we'd like to have them come work for us. We're not trying to poach the students who might be working in your area, of course, but if you know students who are looking for work, not currently employed, please send them to us. We'll go to the next slide here. So yeah, so a moment ago I talked about keeping a referral simple, but it's like, okay, well that's great. Well, what do you mean by that? To me, it's about staying away. Don't worry about reciting policies. They can change from time to time. We're willing to make exceptions to policies for students who demonstrated a particular need or whatever. So I wouldn't get in the weeds on that. But there are three things that I think students oftentimes have sort of a barrier for in terms of whether or not they choose to come see us. First of all, of course, it's cost. Is it going to cost anything? Nope, there's going to be no money out of your pocket for that. The other thing is students will oftentimes, I think, understandably say, I don't really have time for this. And our argument for that is you've got to do some studying anyway. You've got to be engaged with the material in any event. Why not do that with a study partner who not only has had this course material before, but has demonstrated that they're a very good student across the board, that has received specialized training to help you. That's a really good use of your time. You're going to be much more efficient at the studying if you come and study with a study partner. I've flirted before with the idea of trying to get rid of the word tutor because I feel like it comes with good baggage and bad baggage, right? Like the good baggage is, I think everybody has a concept of what it is. And so getting rid of it makes no sense because then people won't know what you're talking about. But I also think that particularly this third point here, where people, I think sometimes students think, people are going to think I'm stupid if they see me walking into the tutoring center, right? Like we always talk about tutoring in terms of need. And we always focus those conversations around students who, need help. And I would argue we all need help. Is there a single one of us who manages to get through a day without somebody's help? I think help is a common thing, and we all need it. And so I want students to feel comfortable. I want students to understand and to know that to choose to seek out assistance, to choose to seek out a study partner is a smart thing to do. It's what successful students do. And so we want to destigmatize the work that happens in the center so that students have a sense of confidence when they come in. So I think that's very important in your messaging to students as well. As you're referring them to us, help them to feel confident about that decision. And then also help them to understand what might be appropriate collaboration and inappropriate collaboration, right? I think sometimes in our business, we might send mixed messages about that a little bit, uh, almost out of necessity, because in order to evaluate a student's learning or their progress or their abilities, we kind of have to isolate their performance sometimes. And I think sometimes when trying to isolate their performance, we isolate them, right? We isolate them from other types of help that they might get. So helping a student understand that we're not going to let them cheat in our centers, right? Like that's not what we're there. We're not there to do the work for them. We're not there to ensure that they get a certain grade or whatever. We're there to help them understand the material. We're here to help them develop better study habits and those kinds of things. So if that's in your messaging too, I think that that would be very, very helpful. So I think we can go to, I know we've got some other questions here, some good questions too, by the way. Becca, you are on a roll. So do we pay our tutors? Absolutely. So yes, we pay the tutors, and then, but you said, I meant, what do you pay your tutors? So our current pay rate is it's 1001 for reasons that I won't go into here, but it's 1001. And then when they get to their certification level, which is usually within, like after the first semester, they've for most of them they've had the opportunity to go through the remainder of the training, right? So we do some training up front to get them oriented, and then they continue their training through the first semester. We bump them up to 1050, but I just had a meeting yesterday with my staff, and we've been evaluating data that Cheryl Stewart, who is our next speaker, actually, has helped us to gather. And we want to be a very competitive internal employer here at Wright State. So we're looking to bump that up to $12 an hour here, and that'll be the starting pay. And then we want to go to about $12.50. Currently, that would put them in about the 91st percentile of pay at the university, and we feel like that's pretty competitive. Again, we're not trying to beat anybody necessarily, but we need to attract highly qualified students to our areas. We're going to continue to do research on that as well to see what the outside market is doing, and see if 12 is the right number, sort of, to compete with the chicken place across the street or whatever. One thing I know we won't be able to do is offer them a $400 signing bonus, but hey, you do what you can, right? So let's see. I think
I
there's,
was going to say we do want to compete with retail and food service across the street, right? And so one of the challenges we've seen in students is they have many competing roles more than ever before,
yes,
and work has been a part of that. So if we can, we have about 1,500 students that work on our campus any given semester. So if we can make that pay appropriate so that they're not having to work multiple jobs and they can focus on being a good student, then all the better. So
yeah, we certainly think that there are a lot of benefits to working on campus, and in our area, particularly. Obviously, we have a sense of pride about that, but we're not alone in that, certainly on campus. But as Cheryl Stewart is getting ready to tell you, there are obviously some other experiences the students might have as well that can be equally important. So without further ado, Career Services Director Cheryl Stewart.
Thank you, David. Tim, you can go ahead and get to that first slide. Thank you. So again, we're so glad to have all of you on with us today. And I am your final speaker, and then we're going to move into an engagement activity. So stay tuned for that. But this increased student engagement is related to their student success and his likelihood of their persistence. This is not an uncommon quote or phrase. I think everybody that is engaged with students certainly agrees with this and understands, you know, where this comes from. So what about career services and career services connection to the student retention experience and to helping to retain students throughout their collegiate journey? Well, that educational persistence leading to life beyond graduation is really the core mission of career services. Next slide. So you're familiar with this cap and gown analogy. You see often the words career services, or career services posters at colleges and universities having the cap and gown, because we think of students getting that job after graduation as a part of the end of the college experience. But the message we want to talk about here with this slide is really about the work of career services really starts early and often. Our job as a team is to help students with self-discovery, to help them make those early career decisions, to work on their skill building, resume development, interview skills, maybe some of that business etiquette, and really helping those students to develop those professional skills and professional relationships that will help prepare them for the transition to work. And we really want to do this by having our career services team help educate the students, empower the students, and connect them with these experiential opportunities that help them learn about themselves and the careers that they want to pursue. Next slide. Some top motivations for choosing a bachelor's degree. Again, I do not expect this will surprise anyone, and you've got various sources for this. This is one of many, but the National Alumni Career Mobility Survey from August of 21, basically sharing with us here that when students were asked their top reasons, that 73.6% said, hey, career success, that's one of the reasons I'm choosing to go on to college. And kind of second in line was, I know that this particular degree or credential is required for the job or the career that I want to have. So those same students, 49% of them also said that knowing they needed the credential to attain their dreams was a top reason. What's interesting is if you take common knowledge like this, and we move to the next slide, I kind of love this kind of information about career services specifically. So this comes from Forbes magazine article that really was looking at some data around career services in higher education. And it basically is telling us that the graduates who rated their experience of connecting with career services as very helpful were 5.8 times more likely to agree that their university, Wright State, prepared them for post-collegiate life and the world of work. They're also, those same students, 3 times more likely to say to people who ask them, you know, my education was worth the cost. And as we know, that's a common debate among students and parents about how much education costs and credentialing for a career costs a student. Equally fun, 3.4 times more likely if they're connecting with career services and having a good experience. They're more likely, our admissions staff loves this, to recommend Wright State, you know, to a future prospective student. And in terms of the foundation staff or the alumni relations staff, these same students making these connections with career success on their campus are 3 times more likely to donate back to their alma mater, in this case, Wright State. So you can see where career services is a beginning to end part of the student experience. Next slide. So what can we all do collectively to help our students succeed and proceed towards graduation? You know, ask any admissions counselor or an enrollment staff person, what are the two things parents and students most commonly ask at these orientation programs and at our Right from the Start programs and at an introduction to college presentations? And they're talking about the finances and futures. So Michael Grice and I have talked about this many times. And the financial part, Michael opened our conversation with how complicated the bill is and all the financial aid components, but futures. I mean, parents, before their students even get here, and students themselves are always asking many questions about career services, about internships, about experiential learning, study abroad, things that will enhance their resume, will enhance their classroom learning experience. So what can we all do together around these needs and how can we contribute? You know, directing students to a career services professional on our campus. Once we get them, then we're encouraging them to use the resources and to engage with all of those career building opportunities. We also want to talk with our students from the prospective student to the admitted student to the early arriving student on our campus first term, whether they're undecided or decided students. We have all kinds of services that help the students early on. Ultimately, we want to work with the students each step of the way during their collegiate journey, and those three goals at the bottom of this slide: to develop their career plans, to set those professional goals, and to work on making decisions and reevaluating their decisions each step of the way, fine-tuning their career plan. As Amanda talked to you earlier about the academic plan, we really run in parallel. We want them to have those academic plans right beside these career plans and working together towards their goals sophomore year, junior year, and so forth. Next slide. So career education for every student is really our common goal across the team. We do have career consultants in each of the colleges, as Amanda spoke earlier. We do have these student success suites where the academic advisors are located within each academic college, including one in the student success building for kind of our undecided folks who aren't admitted into their college yet. And what we've done, and Tim talked about this early on today, was we've co-located, those career advising team members, those career consultants, with the academic advisors. So if you haven't dropped by one of our student success suites yet, we've got one in the student success building and one in each of the primary buildings of our academic colleges. And in that suite, you're going to find some of Amanda's team members, some of our team members from career services working together. So not only are they working together to refer students back and forth from an academic advising session to going on to a career session or vice versa, but they're also, these team members are working together at every admissions presentation, orientation presentation, and so forth. So we're co-presenting. We're also working together with the faculty in the classroom in terms of being able to embed career-specific initiatives with the faculty into the classroom experience or into the academic club experience, or really connecting that faculty, student, career consultant, and employer experience in terms of any of the programming that we're offering that's customized to each academic college, and sometimes even at the academic major level as well. Next slide. So here on this slide, you know, we've got a few boxes. This is really kind of the plan on how we all work together. You know, 1 and 2 here at Wright State, let's work together to help our students understand their career options and create those career plans. That's something we can all contribute to. Let's work together as a team at Wright State to teach these students how to find the resources, the information that helps them make those career decisions. And the networking, you know, that networking is not just with employers, but with our faculty, with our alumni, with other students. The impact of one student speaking to another student about the kind of internship experience they had is incredibly helpful. And boxes 5 and 6, we can work together to encourage our students to participate in those career-related experiential experiences, co-ops, and internships, and more. And also to make those career decisions each step of the way and reevaluate those each step of the way. So as you can imagine, as just an example, the student who has an internship experience early as a sophomore, and then it's not quite what they had hoped. It maybe isn't what they were looking for, or they've learned something about themselves and they want to try something else. Well, that's why starting early is helpful. We can now work with them on a second and sometimes even third experiential experience, and that allows the student to make additional decisions or reevaluate those early decisions to try to create that best fit. Next slide. This is my final slide coming up. So I wanted to mention here, this is not on the slide, but it's important to me. And before I wrap up, I want to mention it to all of you. We are very fortunate here in the state of Ohio that Ohio's Department of Higher Education, ODHE, they have placed high priority on career services and student success initiatives across the board. Ohio is a national leader in establishing their statewide priorities to help our students get the skills they need to contribute to their career success and be part of the world of work. Ohio looks to retain graduates in the state of Ohio with our Ohio employers and places priorities on that as well. Basically, Tim and Amanda and I and others in our division had the opportunity, about a year and a half ago, I guess, to contribute to the Ohio best practices of career and academic success for the student experience at each of the state universities. And so keeping all of that in mind, at Career Services at Wright State, we feel very supported at the state level, certainly by Dr. Edwards in the ways that she's supportive of our division, the way we are supportive divisionally and across the collaborations that my other team members have mentioned that we have with each of you, faculty and staff across the university. You know, it's easy to look at these last, 5 bullet points and say, Tim said I could expand the staff today. So we invite all of you to be mini career advisors and to be working with the students, make those referrals as we've all talked about today, but also really just thinking about those things that help the student get from here to where they want to be is really creating that plan and creating it early so we can work with them on those engagement opportunities so they can reflect each step, so they have those hands-on experiential and work experiences, and then they transform, as David talked about earlier, what have I learned on my new job and how do I translate that to the interview experience, to the resume experience? How do I articulate and sell my competitive skills to an employer as a competitive applicant? And ultimately, we want our students not just to be able to have some career meal to eat today and just give it to them on a dish. We want to teach them to fish, as the saying goes. We want them to be able to know how to launch that career-specific job search or graduate school search in their specific field of work so that they can not only do it this first time with an internship, this first or second time when they're graduating for their career job, but that they go away from Wright State knowing how to manage their career and have advancement opportunities. With that being said, Tim, if you want to advance to my questions slide, if you have any brief questions, glad to take those. Otherwise, we have an engagement opportunity for you participants today.
So feel free to unmute yourself if you've got a question or put it in the chat, or we will have time at the very end to ask more questions as well. So whatever your preference. And while you're formulating that question, I'm going to hand it over to our friend Michael Greist, who now the work begins. You got some work to do on some case studies. So Michael?
We've taught you most of what you need to know. So we hope you were listening because we're going to ask you now, we're going to give you some scenarios of students who have some issues. They've got some concerns, some things to work through, some decisions to make. And we're going to ask you guys in small groups. Emily's going to put you into some breakout rooms. We're going to ask you in your group to tell us what we should do next. And these are actual student situations. The names and some details have been changed to protect the innocent. So go ahead, Tim, and let's show them their first case study. A faculty member has reported in RAPS that Jamie has missed 2 weeks of class and has failed to turn in the last 2 assignments. After being contacted by a success coach, Jamie reports that they have been unable to purchase books or gas to drive to campus, and they believe they may be failing all of their courses. Jamie thinks that maybe they should just withdraw from all of their courses and try again next semester. It's week 3 of this semester, and Jamie has scholarships and grant-based aid that they use to pay for their tuition. What's the burning issue here? in all of these scenarios, we want you to identify what's the biggest concern that we should address first. And based on that, who should we maybe refer this student to? So Emily's going to send you off into some breakout rooms. Introduce yourselves quickly to build some community. We're going to give you about 3 minutes to come to a conclusion and report back, okay?
So you will be in breakout sessions of 3 or 4 people. I will send, if you want to go ahead and take a picture of this slide so that you can refer to it in your breakout session, I will try to send a broadcast message that has the same detail if you need it. And you'll be in sessions of 3 or 4. A few of you have notified me that you don't have camera or mic, so this might be by chat. So make sure that you include people that don't have a camera and or mic. And so hopefully that'll work. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
Welcome back. I cannot wait to hear what you guys have decided. So some group be brave, push a spokesperson out in front of us and tell us what's the burning issue and who should we refer them to?
I'll be brave. I
Go
might help.
ahead.
Couple things. One, it's really early in the semester. We're wondering if they don't have money to buy gas or books, was there an issue with their financial aid being dispersed? If it did get dispersed, it's kind of early to be completely out of money. We are concerned because if they drop classes, they will not have earned the use of that aid, so they could end up with a huge receivable to the university. Considering referring them to the food pantry, to student wellness. We're concerned that there may be an anxiety, depression, adjustment to campus issue. I think I've said everything I needed to
Yeah.
say. And Raider Connect definitely to talk about the financial aid.
Yeah. So you guys picked up on the right issue here. Getting the student books and helping them to be able to afford gas to get to classes is a great place to start. And a referral to student advocacy and wellness in this case is probably the right thing because they can case manage because there's a number of different issues afoot here. But we need to get the student to class. So we also need to advocate for them to communicate with their other faculty members here because they said they think they're failing their other classes. They don't know. And we haven't heard RAPS reports from the other classes, so it's a possibility that that's not a huge concern. But in this case, helping them get gas in their gas tank and purchase textbooks either by looking at additional financial aid resources or at other resources available through advocacy and wellness is the right place to go. So first we get them back in class and working towards some academic success. And then we worry about other things as we move along. If they drop out in week 3, guys, we're past the date for them to receive a refund for classes and they're going to lose financial aid based on dropping those classes. So it's going to create a bigger financial hole for them if we suggest that they go ahead and drop out and try again another semester. There'd be huge barriers for them to being re-enrolled for the spring semester or beyond. Okay, we're ready for our next case study. That was great, Donna. I loved also that our budget person called them receivables to the university. That's some good accountant language there. This is about Casey. Casey has reported to their academic advisor that they plan to withdraw and come back in a year because their courses aren't interesting and they plan to change their major. It's past the last date to receive a refund for these courses. They aren't sure what they want to major in, but they did admit to enjoying their communications courses and they hope to find a career that would allow them to work with people, but their social work classes just aren't what they expected. Casey has some scholarships that require full-time enrollment, but has discussed that 5 courses feels like a lot to handle while working part-time off campus as a server. What issues or concerns should be considered first? And who do you think we should refer this student to? Take about 2 to 3 minutes in a new group and figure out what's the burning issue and who should we refer the student to.
All right, and you're off.
Thank you and welcome back to our show. Who would like to tell us more about Casey? What's the burning issue here and where should we refer Casey to? Let me take a swing at it.
I can swing.
Please.
I think. Okay. We've thought overall the biggest issue was the student needed to get together with a career consultant to decide on a new major. So that would be a good idea. Also, the career services office could help with finance, maybe get a campus job. So
Okay.
one of our members said major first, finance second, that those are the two issues.
Right. Thank you so much.
And the scholarship office, because if she dropped out or he dropped out, yeah, losing that scholarship would be silly.
So I think there's a number of places to go here, but the place to start really, Pam is right. We would love for that student to step in and talk with a career consultant who's conveniently located right in that student success suite with the academic advisor, and explore a major. After that, then, there are in 5 courses, which likely ends up being more than 12 hours. It's probably at least 15 hours, maybe 16 or more. And so after they've decided on a new major, they could have a conversation with their academic advisor again and say, is there a class here that I can drop that will have the least impact on my next major to bring the courses down and then not lose that scholarship dollars for this semester or future semesters and stay on track? So in this case, we're sending them off to a career consultant to help them pick a new major, and then to the academic advisor to try to prioritize the classes they're already in to see what will count to keep them moving towards graduation without a gap. Okay, the last scenario. Kyle, an academic advisor has reported to Raider Connect that Kyle would like to drop their French class and wants to know how it will impact their financial aid. Kyle is currently on SAP probation, that's the Standards of Academic Progress, and is enrolled in 3 courses for 12 hours. It's too late to receive a course refund. They're also set to graduate in December after 5 glorious years at Wright State University. When pressed about dropping, Kyle reveals that they believe the professor is targeting them in class because of their differing religious and political beliefs. They have stopped attending the course because they're uncomfortable and likely performing poorly. What issues or concerns should be considered? What's the burning issue here? And who might you refer this student to? Take 2 minutes and introduce yourself quickly, and then come back and talk to us about it.
All right, and you're off.
Hello, welcome. So Kyle is complicated, but I will tell you that we're not creating complicated situations for you. These are actual things that have happened. And this is based on the name and the department has been changed here. But who wants to jump out? What's the burning issue here for Kyle? Anybody feeling confident or just lucky?
The burning issue's got to be, why are they talking about politics and religion in a French class, right?
Well, maybe it started on the French Revolution and then it went forward. That's probably it. So, guys, so that we have time for questions, the issue here is we need Kyle to graduate. We first we need to assess whether or not this French class is necessary, and if the answer is no, then we drop the French class and move forward. If it is necessary to graduate, then we start working on things to keep Kyle in class. So a referral to David's folks about how we could get some support for this French class, some academic support to bring the grade up, and it's essentially a tutor. But this is also a case where student advocacy and wellness could get involved to facilitate a conversation between the student and the French professor. And, or we've not mentioned it today, but the ombuds person is also a tool here if there needs to be some back and forth, some arbitration's the wrong word, some negotiation back and forth between Kyle and the professor to alleviate this issue. But we want the student to graduate. That's the burning issue. We don't want them to have to come back for another semester. We want to make this particular situation work. I'm going to turn it back over to Tim, who's going to take your questions for the last few minutes we have together.
Yes, so we do have time for questions, so certainly ask away. You can unmute yourself or put them in the chat. We do, Adam, have an ombudsman. It's Greg Shear, and he just started in that position, I think, earlier this semester, if I
And was here earlier, actually, I think, in this training session.
Yes, that's true. He was here. Maybe he's still here. But yeah, he is our ombudsman. And certainly another one of those referrals. And so, you've heard a lot of different referral points today, and I want to make the point that it can get overwhelming. Who do we send to who, when? There's a couple of resources. The Wright.edu/help gives a nice summary of all of the different services you can refer students to. But as a general rule, what we want to leave you with is that there is no wrong referral to anyone that you've met on this call today. Now, that might mean we're going to give it to somebody else, that is the person that can help resolve that issue or help that student through that issue. But certainly all of us work certainly close enough together that it is a collaborative effort. Did I hear someone ask a question? Okay. I want to just end our conversation. Oh, there's a question. Becca's got a question. Something that's come up. Can we or should we say anything about anything before we send students your way, if we know anything, or just let you do the talking? Well, that's a great question, Becca, and I'll let others chime in here, but I'll take the first stab at it. I think that having as much information as possible is always helpful, but you certainly want to be careful how you might communicate that. Sometimes an email might be inappropriate. Picking up a phone certainly could be appropriate. So we always want as much information as possible. We don't necessarily always want to have the student have to tell and retell their story over and over again. That can get frustrating and certainly contribute to the sense of runaround. Others want to chime in on that question?
I think a clean handoff when you're referring a student to any one of our offices is great. And so if you can provide a referral by staying on the call before you transfer to tell us what you know from the phone call, or by adding some notes when you forward the email of what you know, is always helpful. We also want to ask you never to guess. So so don't tell a student, I think it's Write or Connect, but you can probably go ahead and drop that. Or I'm pretty sure English 1200 is going to be offered in the spring, but you can also ask your academic advisor. Like if they're going to hear what they want to hear from that. So make sure that you stick to the things you know for sure when you're providing that information. Yeah.
Becca had qualified that question to say she meant to the student, should they tell the student that they made that referral? And I think so, Becca.
I think so.
That in most instances, any way that you can help them understand what that experience might be, in psych or in counseling, they call it anticipatory guidance. So if you'd say, hey, look, I really, I want to make a referral for you to X, and here's what you'll experience. The person over there that I'm talking to is great. Really giving them a sense of what they can experience, I think is really helpful. So there's no surprises. I like this quote from Tim Rennick. We had him on campus a few years back, and he said that instead of focusing so much attention on making students more college ready, we should be making colleges more student ready. And I think this is really an important sort of summation of really everything that we do to help a student complete what they've started here. It doesn't mean we have to reduce rigor or reduce quality of education or dumb anything down in any way. It just means as we look to understand the student that we have, the student that we have in front of us, it's always best for us to say, what can we do to help that student be successful? And again, as an institution that prides itself on its open admission status, this becomes incredibly important, really, for all that we do. I'm going to hand it back over to Emily so that she can wrap things up for us. So we want to thank everybody. I want to thank our directors and the team that you met today, a great team. It's an honor and a privilege to work with all of them. And so I'm glad that you got to know them a little bit better today as well. So thank you to all of you.
Yes, thank you, Tim, and your team. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to attend today. I hope you really learned a lot about how to help retain students at Wright State University. I will be sending you an electronic survey shortly. Please fill it out so we can use the feedback to improve programs and for ideas for future topics, things that we can cover. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.